Well, now here's an interesting article from a place I don't know if I've ever, got a good story from, and like a full story, and read you the big bulk part of it, whatever. Um, from again, it's mainstream for one thing, but Forbes. How many times have I come out here and said, "Oh, Forbes, I'm getting this article from Forbes, and here's what it says." There might be a one or two liner I'll talk about, but not a full article that I want to spend telling you about normally. But this one, yes, from Forbes, may be worth telling. This was actually posted a few days ago, and it's no wonder I didn't come across it normally because I would never check here for news. But I found it, and people have been posting it. I think maybe on Godlike Production, someone posted a piece of this, and I found it. So this story is by Ralph Benko. President Trump replaced the dollar with gold as the global currency to make America great again. Where is this coming from? All of a sudden. Inside President Trump's otherwise standard Trump stump speech at CPAC was nestled what might be a most intriguing observation. Global cooperation, dealing with other countries, getting along with other countries is good. It's very important. But there is no such thing as a global anthem, a global currency, or a global flag. This is the United States of America that I'm representing. That's what he said, right? Trump. There's a keen insight in there that could just maybe transform our lives, America, and the world. No global currency? Was this with the poetic observation that there is no such thing as a global anthem or a global flag, just a trope? Or could it contain a political portent with potential high impact on world financial markets? Let's drill down, he says. As it happens, there is a global currency. It's called the US dollar. Most international trade is priced in dollars. The Bretton Woods International Monetary System invested the dollar, which then was defined as, and intentionally, internationally, was legally convertible to gold at the time for $35 an ounce with global currency status. France's then finance minister, later its president, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, called the reserve currency status of the dollar, its status along with gold, as global currency, an exorbitant privilege. You got that right. By this, d'Estaing was alluding to the fact, as summarized at Wikipedia, that as American economist Barry Itchengreen summarized it, it costs only a few cents for the Bureau of Engraving and Printing to produce a $100 bill. But other countries had to pony up $100 of actual goods in order to obtain one. That privilege, which made great sense during the period immediately after World War II, became a curse. In 1971, President Nixon, under the influence of his Svengali-like Treasury Secretary John Connally, suspended temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold. That closure proved durable instead of temporary. The dollar became, and remains, although I don't know for how long, the world's global currency. What had been an exorbitant privilege devolved into an exorbitant liability, as my former professional colleague, John D. Mueller, of the Ethics and Public Policy Center, formerly Representative Jack Kemp's chief economist, by the way, writing in the Wall Street Journal, in Trump's Real Trade Problem is Money, recently and astutely observed, quote, a monetary system based on a reserve currency is unsustainable. Since foreign official dollar reserves, for example, are acquired and must be repaid in goods. In other words, the increase in official dollar reserves equals the net exports of the rest of the world, which means it must also equal U.S. international payments deficits, an unsustainable situation. In other words, if President Trump wishes to address America's merchandise trade deficit, balanced to perfection, of course, by a capital accounts surplus, he will find that allowing the dollar to be used as the global currency is the real snake in the economic woodpile. The dollar's burden as the international reserve currency, not currency manipulation by our trading partners or bad treaties, is the true villain in the ongoing melodrama of crummy job creation. Mueller's Wall Street Journal column enumerates the 3 options open to President Trump. Hint, it's the third option you're going to like. First option would be muddle along under the current dollar standard, a position supported by resigned foreigners and some nostalgic Americans, among them Brian Riley and William Wilson of the Heritage Foundation and James Pethukowski at the American Enterprise Institute. Number 2, you could do turn the IMF, International Monetary Fund, into a world central bank issuing paper such as special drawing rights, SDRs, reserves, as proposed in 1943 by Mr. Keynes. You know that, Keynesian. People out there who like his view, which is not good. Since the 1960s by Robert A. Mundell, and in 2009 by Zhou Zhaochuan, governor of the People's Bank of China. Drawbacks. This kind of standard is highly political, and the allocation of special drawing rights essentially arbitrary, since the IMF produces no goods. Third option. Adopt a modernized international gold standard as proposed in 1960s by Rueff and in 1984 by his protege, Louis E. Lerman, and then Representative Jack Kemp. So if we were to muddle along, the first choice would, of course, be entirely antithetical to Trump's promise to make America great again. It would destroy his crucial commitment to get the economy growing at 3%, vastly faster than it has for the past 17 years, which also happens to be the recipe for robust job creation and upward income mobility for workers. It also is an essential ingredient for balancing the federal budget while rebuilding our infrastructure and military. Number 2, if we turn to the IMF, to turn to the IMF into a world central bank, of course, would be anathema to Trump's economic nationalism. To subordinate the dollar to the IMF's SDR would be equivalent to lowering Old Glory and replacing the American flag with the flag of the United Nations on every flagpole in America. Unthinkable under a Trump administration. That leaves the third option, to adopt a modernized international gold standard as proposed in the 1960s by Rueff and in 1984 again by his protege Louis E. Lerman, and then Representative Jack Kemp, whose eponymous foundation I advise, he says. To this one should add, as Forbes.com contributor Nathan Lewis has shrewdly observed, the removal of tax and regulatory barriers to the use of gold as currency. As I have repeatedly observed, Donald Trump shows a strong affinity for gold. He has also shown a keen intuitive grasp of how the gold standard was crucial to having made America great. Donald Trump said, "We used to have a very, very solid country because it was based on a gold standard." He told WMUR television in New Hampshire in March of last year. But he said it would be tough to bring it back because we don't have the gold. Other places have the gold. Unless he's finding out now, as Mr. President, we actually do have some gold. And if it's like Bix Weir says, it's an enormous amount of gold. Trump's comment to GQ, bringing back the gold standard would be very hard to do, but boy, would it be wonderful. We'd have a standard on which to base our money, he said. Trump has been misled to believe that we don't have the gold. Other places have the gold. In fact, the United States, Germany, and the IMF together have about as much gold as the rest of the world combined, and America has well more than Germany and the IMF combined. Note, this column has been updated to clarify that the United States has well more gold than Germany and the IMF combined, but not, as originally stated, more than twice as much. Oh, thanks. We have the gold. Bringing back the gold standard would not be very hard to do. So, we got another page here. What do we got? Trump's politically unique intuition that we used to have a very, very solid country because it was based on the gold standard is no trivial matter. It is true. And as he has written elsewhere. So I think, I'm just going to say this, I'm pretty sure we're going back to that gold standard in some way, shape, or form, whether it's us alone or us doing it, China doing it, Russia doing it, other countries doing it with us, or a mixture of the IMF thing where we decide to use a single currency unit backed by gold. All I know is what comes next, according to my historical research, says gold, precious metals, etc., have to and will back the next currency. That's what history says. Because after an implosion of the financial debt system, which is out of control, nobody's going to say in their right mind, let's just do it over again the same way we did it. And we'll see how long we last. People don't like short-term solutions. We want to know, this big crisis happened. Nobody saw it coming, even though we did. Nobody knew this would ever happen. Yes, we did. But they don't know that, the average person. They believe what they're told. It was a one-off, etc. So when it's a one-off, we want a solution so that this never happens again. Okay, we heard you. Here's the solution. And it goes back and forth through a cycle. It is gold. It's always gold. All roads lead to gold, precious metals, etc. So we now have a Forbes article telling Mr. President, back the currency by gold. Back it with gold, Mr. President. Forbes. Really? That sounds a little bit out of place to me, if I don't mind saying so. But when I see a big name like Forbes saying it, and it's in alignment with what I think I know, what I've been studying all these years, it's worth repeating. Take care.